What is Mongoose? What are the advantages of using it? Let's quickly explore. We already know that we can directly connect and access the MongoDB database from the Node API, right? Now, instead of performing the operations directly, we can use the library Mongoose to perform actions in MongoDB from Node.js. Okay, now you will ask, when we can directly do the operations, then why do we need this mediator? The reason is because Mongoose provide many advantages over accessing the MongoDB database directly. Okay, and the first advantage is data validation. Yes, like SQL, by using Mongoose library, we can check and validate the data that is going or inserting into our database. Okay, this is very important to restrict the bad and invalid data. Otherwise, inconsistent invalid data problems can arise in your database, right? The second advantage is middleware support, meaning we can automate and perform some operations in the node application just before and after executing the database of operation. Okay, so if you know triggers in SQL, then you can relate it, but don't worry, I will cover a separate question on this advantage for better understanding. Okay, and the third advantage is, by using Mongoose, you can define the relationship between the collections. Okay, like we have the foreign key relations in SQL. Okay, I will cover also this in detail in separate question. All right. Finally, here I will provide two definition of Mongoose. First, Mongoose is an object data modeling ODM library for MongoDB and Node.js. Okay, I will explain this data model, object data model in upcoming question. Second definition is, Mongoose provide a schema-based solution to model application data. Great, both are valid definition. These are both are written here so that later your revision will be very quick and fast from the book. And now in the upcoming questions, I will show you the implementation and proof of all these advantages, and all these definition I will also make it more clear, like what is a schema, what is data model, how validation is done, what is middleware support. Everything I will cover question wise. Okay. How to install Mongoose in Node.js. This is not an interview question, but if you are new to Mongoose, then just open the Node terminal and run this command npm install Mongoose and press enter. This will install the Mongoose library for your Node project. Okay, I hope the MongoDB server and MongoDB database is already installed and you know about it, because that is like a prerequisite, okay, for this Mongoose. What is the role of schema in Mongoose? How do I define schema? This I think is the most important part of Mongoose, and that is schema. In short, schema is like defining the structure of the collection. Like we define the structure of a table in SQL. Yeah, similar to that. Let me first quickly show you how to define the Mongoose schema in the code. For that, first required is the Mongoose library. And then like this, define the schema by using this mongoose.schema function. Now listen carefully. In this function, as the argument, you have to pass the fields that you want in your user collection document. Okay, name, email, age, anything. And inside those fields, you have to define the properties or the validations on those fields. And if you remember those constraints in SQL, these properties similar to them only. For example, here name field is of type string, and then it is always required, and the minimum accepted length of the characters in this field is 3. The purpose of this properties is, if you will use this schema, user schema, to create some user document in a user collection, then you cannot enter a name with less than 3 characters. That is the meaning of this minimum length property here. Okay, that will not be accepted less than 3 characters. Great, the schema is ready, or you can say the structure is ready in the form of this user schema object. Now, wherever you will use this user schema or object, this structure and validation will be applied there. Now, to use this schema, first you have to create one model user from this schema by using this mongoose.model function like this. Remember that this user model is like a function only, and it represents the collection in the MongoDB database. Okay, so it's equivalent to a collection. So now, like, you will perform all your collection operations which you perform with the collection in MongoDB. Now you will perform those operations with this user model. Okay, because now we will be using the Mongoose, not the MongoDB directly. Okay, and for that, first you have to export this user like this, so that user model like this, so that you can use this model in other files for creating user or for anything. Great. In the upcoming question now, I will show you how to create the user document from this user model, and then how to insert the document in the database also. But yes, for now, you know these things about schema. First, a schema in Mongoose defines the structure, validation rules, and behavior of MongoDB documents, which ensures data consistency and integrity. Meaning, schema validation will ensure that invalid data will not be entered in the MongoDB database. Okay, and as you remember, this is the biggest advantage of using Mongoose, right? Second point is, schema is defined by using the schema function. Great, that is the answer of actually the second part of this question, and everything is written here for later revision. Okay, how to perform database operations using Mongoose with Node.js. Alright, this is a practical question, and I will quickly show you the code for inserting a user document in the user collection in the MongoDB database using Mongoose. Okay, for that, first require the Mongoose library. Then define a Mongoose schema like this. Then create a Mongoose model user from the above defined schema, user schema. And finally export the user. Until here, I explained in the previous question also, right? Now we have to use this user model only to do all the operations in MongoDB database. For that, in another file app.js, first require this user file and get the user model. Now connect to the MongoDB database. For that, you can use the connect method of this Mongoose library. Okay, and pass the database server address and database name as the parameters. Great, all the schema and connection setup is ready now. Now listen carefully. The next step is to create a new user instance like this from the user model. Remember, instance and objects are same things, but mostly we will use the word instance here. Okay, great. After that, use the save function of this new user insert to save or insert the above user document inside the MongoDB database. That's the main point. And at last, call this save user function like this and run this app.js file. That's it. This is how we can perform the database operation using Mongoose with Node.js. Now you can ask one question. We are just inserting the database here, right? But where we are validating the data? Because ultimately that is the purpose with the Mongoose, right? So otherwise we can directly use the MongoDB also. Why we defined and a schema, why we use this Mongoose. So that validation thing that we will see in the next question, upcoming question. But before that, here I have summarized the 5 steps that I have performed. See, here is the summary, and summary helps in basically remembering the keywords. And in the interviews, if you know the whole implementation, but if you don't remember the keywords like schema, model, instance, then explaining the answers will be a very difficult job, right? So for that, I always give the summary in the questions. How will Mongoose do data validation for node applications? All right, that is the main role of Mongoose, and the answer is very simple. Here we have the schema defined, and then we created the user model from the schema, then we exported it, and in app.js we imported this user model and made the connection to the MongoDB database. All these steps you already know. Now like this, we are creating a new user from the user model, but this time with an invalid age. Meaning, as per the schema, the age should be a number. But here we are assigning a string value to the age. And that's why it is invalid, right? Now listen carefully. To capture this invalid data, we will first call the validate function of this user model like this. And because our user is invalid, one error will be thrown and captured in the catch function, where we can log it or write it. And this will be the output in the console. Okay. So as you can see, the save method will be not executed. Database operation will not happen. So that's how we can validate, by using the validate method before saving anything to the database. Okay. And the same thing is written here so that your last minute preparation just before the interviews will be very quick and fast. How to perform CRUD operations using Mongoose in Node application. See, if you already know the CRUD operations and how to perform them directly with the MongoDB database, then it is very simple for you, okay? And I will also very quickly show you the complete code, but in very short time and with very important information only. Okay, so now for CRUD operations, first we will set up the user schema and model like this, and you already know this, right? Now in the app.js file, we will require the user model and set up the MongoDB connection via the Mongoose library. No doubt, right? Now I have created this one method, perform CRUD, and inside this function only we will do all the CRUD operations. Okay, so first create a user instance like this from the user model. Then save this user to the database using the save method of the user model. That is the first CRUD operation, that is create or insert operation. Then for the read operation, use the find method of the user model, and you will get all the users from the database. And if you want to read a single user, then use the find one function of the user model, and here pass the filter criteria as the argument. Okay, see, we are doing all the operation with Mongoose, not directly the MongoDB functions. Okay, those are different, name almost same, but those were different. Then the next operation, CRUD operation, is update. For that, use this update one method of the user model and pass the filter criteria as the first parameter and the update statement as the second parameter. So this means that now user of name happy, those users will be age will be set to 30 now. Okay, then the last CRUD operation is delete. For that, call the delete one function of the user model and pass the filter criteria as the argument, and this will delete all documents which have the name happy. Okay, and remember, this is delete one function, so only one document will be deleted. Sorry for my previously I said all will be deleted, but no, only one document will be deleted. That's it. These are finally you can call the perform CRUD operation and it will perform all these operation. Great, that was really quick, right? So all code and comments are here, and if you have any doubts, then just read the code and comment and you will understand it. One more thing, here these CRUD operations are for, as I said, only one single record will be impacted. Now if you want to insert, read, update, delete multiple records, then just use the many versions of these functions. Okay, same as of MongoDB. When you are directly using MongoDB, then there are many versions also, right, to impact the multiple records. Same. Great, that is the answer to this question. How to define relationships between collections using Mongoose? See, apart from validation, making relationship between collection is another advantage of Mongoose. If you have some idea about the SQL foreign key relationships, then it is very simple and almost same for you. So let's quickly see the code. Suppose you have a user schema and this user can have a profile inside it, right? Now this user can have a profile, but the profile is also in another schema like a table. It's a different schema. Therefore, now to set up the relationship between these user and profile, we will embed this profile like this inside the user schema. And here we will use this ref property to reference the profile model. Okay, and by their object ID. So basically now we are referring to the profile model inside the user collection or schema, you can say, and we are using this object ID as the base of the relation. So if you remember, there is a foreign key in SQL, right? Then this is the same key, this object ID, like this is the base of the relation on which the relation is made. Okay, great. Now then here is our profile schema, and there also we have embedded this user, and and here are our models, user and profile. All right, that is the answer to this question, and the same is written here in very simple words so that your last minute revision will be very quick and fast. How to create a Mongoose model from a schema? You already know the answer, just covering it separately so that you do not miss the small things while revising. A model can be created by using the mongoose.model function after creating the schema, just like this. And the same thing is written here also. How does Mongoose provide middleware support? What are pre-hooks and post-hooks? This is another and very important benefit of using Mongoose. Mongoose provide middleware support. Meaning, suppose your requirement is whenever a new user will sign up in your Node application with the username and password, then every time the password will be encrypted by some algorithm in your Node application, and the encrypted password will be stored in the users collection of the database. Okay, basically in the database, user database. So first you want to encrypt the password. For that purpose, we can use the pre-hooks, which is a very good idea. Let's see the code. Suppose you have this user schema, username and password field will come. Now like this, you can define the pre-hook by using the pre function of your user schema. Okay, so here the first parameter is the CRUD function, CRUD operation name, and second parameter will contain the logic for encrypting or encoding the password just before the saving. Okay, so meaning here I want to execute this hook logic just before executing this save or insert function in the database. Okay, Now instead of save, you can also use delete or update any function name here, crude function name, as per the requirement. But you got the idea, right? That this logic will insert every time just before the insert a save operation in the database. That's the whole idea. Finally, you can use the next callback function. This is used basically to execute the next, which is like insertion to the next function, which is insertion to the database. So if you remember the role of next function in the middleware in nodes, then it is almost same here. Here next will execute the next operation, which in this case is the database insertion. Okay, this is pre-hook. Now similar to this, you can also define the post function of the user schema to execute some logic, but after inserting into the database. Remember, this is for after insertion. Okay, now suppose you want that after the insertion happens successfully, you want to write a log in your node application, like database insertion completed successfully. So that kind of thing you can use post hooks. Okay, great. And one more thing here, you can we do not use next function, because after the post we do not have anything else to execute, right? So that's why. Great, that is the whole idea. And here I have written the simplest description about the middleware support, the pre-hook and the post-hook definitions also, so that while revising just before the interviews, you do not have to listen the whole story again and again. Only one short 3-4 seconds quick look to the slide is enough. And timing is everything in interviews, right?